Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes, bienvenidos al último encuentro del festival
Good
de este
afternoon.
año,
Welcome
el festival de
to the
2019.
last
Esta
Zinemaldia
mañana venía
Meetings
pensando, cuando
in
venía hacia aquí una tontería
2017.
y
This
como
morning
bueno,
when
ya
I
después
was
de tantos
coming
días
here,
tenemos cierta confianza,
I
la voy a compartir con
had a
vosotros.
thought and I
Pensaba
wanted to
que
share it with
podríamos
you.
acuñar un nuevo
I thought
término,
that we
la
could
charlofilia,
find
lo
a
mismo que hablamos de cinefilia,
new,
hablar de
coin a new
charlofilia, que
term.
sería
We could
el
talk
gusto por
about
charlar, que es lo que me pasa a mí. Y la
talking
verdad es que cuando
philia,
acaba el
because this
festival
is
me
what we have
acuerdo
here. We
siempre de
like
las
to talk.
películas, pero me
And
acuerdo
we
mucho,
have
probablemente
different
quizás
films
más, de
today.
las charlas que hemos mantenido aquí.
And
Este
I
año la verdad
remember
es que ha sido
all
una
the films
gozada
I've
y
presented
estoy
here,
seguro
but
de que semana
I
antes de
keep
nuestra
in
final
mind
nos
even
reuniremos a
better
4
all the
equipos
conversations I
con
had with
diferentes
the crews that
aproximaciones al
come
cine,
here to present their
muchísimo
films.
talento aquí en estas 4
So
mesas
I'm
y
very
para animar
happy
un
to have
poco,
here
para
4
despedir ese
crews
último
with
aplauso de este
us,
encuentro,
which
el
will
último aplauso de
be saying
reconocimiento, os
goodbye
pido que
to
los
our
recibáis
meetings in
con
this
un fuerte
festival.
aplauso.
So welcome them, please.
Hello, Sophie. How are you? Bueno, pues
Sophie,
nuestra
how
primera
are you?
película es un film
Our
que se
first film
presenta en la sección
is presented in the Zabaltegui Tabacalera
nos
section,
acompaña
and we
Sophie
have
Hartman, que
with
hace unos
us
cuantos años nos
her
presentó aquí
director,
también su
and Sophie
anterior
Hartman,
película,
who also
5 años,
introduced her
5 ya,
film here 5
el
years
tiempo,
ago.
el tiempo
5
vuela.
years, my God,
Es
how
la
time
anterior
goes
película
by.
que se
So
titulaba
your last
Limbo.
film
Ella es
was
danesa,
presented here.
es una
You're coming
producción
from
de Dinamarca,
Denmark,
Francia y Alemania.
and it's a co-production with Germany, Denmark,
Bueno, en la
and
película, luego te
Denmark and
preguntaré por el
Germany. That's
título,
it.
se titula
Your film
Jirafa.
is called
Es una
Giraffe,
película que,
and
digamos,
it's a
de ficción, pero
film,
muy pegada a
a
la realidad,
fiction.
ambientada en las
It is
obras
fiction,
del
but very
túnel
close
que une
to
Baviera,
reality,
Dinamarca
and
y
it's
Alemania.
very
¿Por qué
close to the building
decidiste
of a
ambientar
tunnel that
esta
links
película
Denmark
en un
with
escenario
Germany?
que tiene
Why
mucha
did you
importancia en el film?
choose this framework for the film?
Why do you decide
Can you hear me?
to shoot a film in that background?
Can you hear the
Background
translation?
of
Okay, thanks.
of the tunnel.
So the initial was I was very interested. I come from the island or from this place or I grew up in the place where this tunnel is being built, and I thought it was it was a way to go to talk about things and themes that that interest me, of transience, of change, of sort of global society. And market powers going in and changing societies and landscapes. So this tunnel seems sort of like a materialization of like a big power coming in and making a lot of change. So that's how it started. Started reading about it. Started reading about what they're doing, the works they're doing, like the Polish guys who are doing the cables in the film. I don't know how many of you have seen the film. I know you've seen the film. And it just sort of became the starting point to talk about themes and do a portrait of a landscape in an area that I was interested in.
A mí me parece una película sobre todo.
I believe.
My Spanish is not very good.
So this film, I think, deals with losses, with the feeling of having lost something. And you have a main character that is the leading character. She leads us through everything, and she wants to read something about what is happening there. What was the role of this character in the film?
Well, like you very well put, she's taking us through the film, and that was very much how I imagined it and wrote her in the beginning, or when I was imagining the film and writing the film, that she was sort of walking a bit in front of us and sort of taking us in this journey through this movie and through the landscape and meeting different people and giving space to the different stories of these different people. So I wanted to. A bit like her work is also as an acknowledged in the film, to sort of collect stories of different people in this area who are going to be move away or go away because of the tunnel will come and they have to leave their houses, or it's going to change the landscape. And I think that so there's the feeling of loss because there's the feeling of change, and I think also she is a bit lost because she's unmoored. As a character, she's living in a hotel. She's traveling around, and that was a theme that I was interested in, to talk about not being connected to places, and talking about what does it mean to be connected, what does it mean to lose connection to a place, and what does that mean to relationships with interpersonal relationships.
Ahora seguimos hablando de Giraffe, pero bueno, como adelanto.
Continue to talk about Giraffe, but I would like to show you a clip of the movie.
Ahí veíamos a los trabajadores.
We could see there the workers that are arriving to work in the tunnel. Have you worked in this film with professional actors only, I think? And why did you decide that?
Because I'm not so into. I like working with actors, and I wanted to, for the two main parts specifically, I wanted professional actors because I wanted them to go into emotions that I didn't want to ask of non-professional actors. But I'm basically interested in not having an actor sort of like incorporate, not incorporate, but like to embody a character. I'm much more interested in the actual farmer, or like we see in this, or like we saw in the small clip, there are construction workers from Poland, and I'm not interested in having a Danish actor or an actor playing a Polish construction worker. I'm interested in in portraying the actual people of the area. So almost all of the people in the film are non-professionals, or are because their faces, there's a farmer, you can see in their face, and that he spent a lot of time outdoors. You can see in Mariusz and the other Polish guys. I mean, they're very, you can see they have different bodies than an actor would have. So it's a lot about portraying and seeing what is actually there. In the film, you pay attention to spaces, to doors, to closed spaces, and I had a feeling that actors are very interesting for you, but you are specifically very interested in everything that surrounds the actor. Are those real spaces, and how did you find them, and how did you work on them? I mean, they're all location. It's all shot on location. There's no studios or anything. And yeah, I'm very interested in space, and what space and how bodies move through space, and what image that will make. I mean, what image a body will project in space, and then what that image will make you feel or see. And I'm interested in, there's the house in the film specifically where she's finding diaries, and I think spaces do contain memories and do contain sort of our like, we all know that we go back to some place where something very significant happened, and that memory will come back again. So there's something connected to space, and then there's the cinematographic space. I'm also interested in how you tell, how you use that in a cinematographic way. I mean, what kind of images you do. So the actors and the bodies of the actors are always a part of the image and part of a space, and not dominating the image, if that makes sense.
We were talking about the title of the film, Giraffe. It's like shocking for me. Why did you decide on this title? Shocking. It's a shock. He was shocked by the title.
Because after watching the film, I'm not quite sure what's the meaning of the title and the giraffe.
The giraffe. So there's the giraffe in the beginning of the film. Yeah. And this giraffe is also on the island. It's not in Africa. There's evergreen trees behind it. It's also part of this landscape. And so the film also being a portrait of this area, I knew this. It's like a safari park on the island, and it's such a curious thing to have a giraffe in Denmark, and they're running around on fields, and there's rhinos also. I thought it's such a curious thing to have. And I mean, zoos in general, it's a longer discussion of zoos and why do we have things and animals. But for the film, it was more talking about this animal being uprooted from where it's actually coming from. It means so it doesn't belong there, but it's still living there. So one of the themes in the film is also what is home, where do I belong, am I a stranger in some place? What is it, you know? So there's the Polish guys who are from Poland but living there. There's the ethnologist Dara in the movie who's also in that area but not permanent. Then there's the people who have been living there for generations. So just and I thought it was very humorous to sort of set the tone of the film of looking, because you know, they're very curious animals, giraffes. They're very, very curious.
The first scene of the movie, it's the giraffe, a close-up of the giraffe looking at the camera. Yes. What's like directing a giraffe?
Very easy. You just wait a long time. But they're, like I said, they're extremely curious, and so they just keep looking at you. And they'll just look and look and look and look. So it was very fun to be so close to them.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you
very much
for coming and for presenting your film here.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Y como digo siempre, esperamos verte en el futuro otra vez.
Hope to see you again in San Sebastian.
I thank you. Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine, and welcome. So, nuestra segunda película.
Our second film is called The Giant. And it's a film that has been presented in the section New Directors. And we have with us the director, David Bravo, and the director of photography, Eric Yu. The Giant. I've read something about the film that drew my attention, which is the film is based or inspired upon stories that you had when you were an adolescent in your teenage years.
Yeah. Is this?
Yeah, it's working.
There was a real life precedent for the film, which I think in general, I don't like to talk about too specifically, simply because I don't want anybody to get the impression that the film is based upon these events. But I had French class with a girl who the year after we had this class together, she disappeared and had been found in the woods. And a few years later, after I had graduated, a girl that was a year younger than me, in the summer before she was supposed to go to college, was found in her car in broad daylight in a major intersection, murdered. And for years, these things were unexplained. And for that reason, purposeless. These were just in life. Maybe one day you go out for a drive and someone finds you, and that's it, and you have no idea. And I think there was something about that unseeable darkness that was the inspiration for this originally. And then also there was the DC sniper attacks. America's crazy, so I'll start there. But yeah, there was a real life inspiration for this.
Comentábamos antes cuando has llegado, cuando has venido.
Talking before when you arrived, that this is maybe a film that has not a purpose of telling a story with a beginning and an end, but to create an atmosphere that involves the public. And I think your work has been terrific in creating atmospheres and through the photography of the film as well. I think the atmosphere is more important in your film than the story. Is it so?
I mean, to me, these things are obviously inextricably related. There is an atmosphere of events that happens. If one thing leads to another, there is a feeling that gives. There's a friction, there's a spark, I think, between two events. So I don't want to say that I privilege atmosphere over story for fear of alienating people who might want to see my films, because I think there is a story there. But I think the thing that is the most important to me is that I know that if I'm going to make a movie, that it has to be something I can give myself entirely to. It has to be something that I know that is unique to me, or that because I don't feel that I deserve to make films unless I can really make a strong argument for it. And so I think for me, the most honest way to do this film was, I don't think that there is a beginning and middle end in life, and certainly not for the things that Charlotte deals with. The things that really haunt her are not things that end. And I don't know. Surely there's a space in cinema to talk about things that don't have endings. And I don't mean just like, we'll pause it here and let's talk about it. I wanted to talk about what is the feeling of things that do not end. Life is a cycle, and it feels like something. And I don't know, obviously as well, the film is so concerned with dreams, and there's something about waking up for a dream where you're not exactly sure what happened, but you felt it nonetheless in your heart. And I felt that if cinema is the closest thing we have to communal dreaming, then the best thing I could do was to try and evoke that feeling.
Very small village and a child that disappears and appears later, and some strange things happen. Let's see a clip.
I think something terrible's happened.
Bueno, como decíamos, nos acompaña también
Before,
David
Raboy is the director, but we also have Eric Yu with us, is the director of photography. And we wanted you to be here because I think it's very interesting due to the fact that the photography in the film is a core element. And there are many scenes that happen during the night, and I think that you were shooting in a mix between 16 and 35 millimeters in celluloid, and I would like you to talk about it and to explain how was your work as a director of photography, and from the point of view of art as well, and how you created this atmosphere.
Yeah, David and I have kind of talked about the darkness as a character kind of overall, and shooting on film, the grain of film allowed us to underexpose the image in this way that the grain kind of created this painterly shadows, the way that digital can't. So we kind of used it and exploited film in that way. So when you see in the darkness, you can't really fully see. There's things that come out and things that are kind of scary, but then you're not really sure what they really look like. And yeah, we kind of talked about that kind of as a basis for building a lot of images, kind of in the way that when you look in the dark in real life, you kind of don't see, you kind of manifest images in your head in the dark as well. And yeah, overall, just artistically, we were talking about trauma and really warm memories kind of colliding into one. And I think a lot of the good memories that we see are shot on 16 millimeter. It kind of feels almost nostalgic. It's very American. They're kind of a collective memory for America. I think the medium, when you see America in summer or American barbecues or fireworks, you kind of have this sort of general notion of Americana, and those things with Charlotte's memories and mixing those with traumatic memories. I think the film is kind of a lot about those collapsing of traumatic memories and the terror of the two colliding. And so yeah, that's kind of what we're wrestling with, both those things between like extreme close-ups of her face, creating a psychological impressionism, and creating a subjective way of looking at what she's dealing with in this summer, and going through adulthood, colliding with these things that happen in the town, where she doesn't really fully know who she is and her place as well in adolescence.
David, I remember a dialogue from one character that says maybe dreams continue when you wake up, and maybe dreams have their own life. And in this mixture between life and reality and dream, did you use any references? It reminded me of Lynch sometimes, David Lynch. I don't know if you used other references.
I know that people definitely talk about Lynch when they see this. I personally haven't seen much Lynch. I've seen what's the one with Willem Dafoe? Wild at Heart, which is a great film. I think for us, in terms of those references, not to be so complicated about it, but I think it was important for us to try and put things aside as much as we could and try to create an intuitive language. For me, again, because this is coming from a feeling and this is coming from the things that I deal with, I'm not interested in borrowing from movies, although subconsciously, of course, I do. There's no way around that. But if we were putting a camera in a place, there's no reason for me to say, we should put it here because someone else did that. That to me is, it's a waste of my being there. I think what we wanted to do was we wanted to be on set. I was like, how can we make this feel the way that we have felt, or the way that Charlotte should be feeling, and that everything would be based purely on radical immersion, and beyond that there would be no other values attributed to cinema prior. Having said that, we are big fans of a Pitchapong. We're Satakul, and you know.
Yeah, I think the film could be on the surface a horror film or a genre film. So anything that we referenced, we wanted to push like the complete opposite direction of what. There's one shot though that is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre shot that was referenced, but I think a Pitchapong is a Thai filmmaker who kind of uses dreams in a way that is quite different than I think what we do, but it's evocative of. He uses it in the realm of mythology, I think, with Thai mythology, but we're kind of using it in a very
Gothic mythology,
or like an American Gothic sense, which is trying to going against it. And then there's Lucrecia Martel, who there's a film called La Ciénaga that I saw, and I was like, this is very humid, and you could feel the.
Lucrecia Martel is the truth for sure.
Yeah, what else?
Hideo Kojima is a video game director that I love.
Yeah.
So it's a Hideo Kojima, Pitchapong, Lucrecia Martel, and Cameron Crowe.
La verdad es que son referencias curiosas por la mezcla que suponen, ¿no?
Curious, the references you use are coming from all over the place, from very different styles. But thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much because you were available, although we called you very, very late. But thank you for coming. And we always say, new directors, that we hope to see you with your next project here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bueno, pues nuestra tercera mesa es una mezcla
third team, our third crew, is more mature, talented. More mature talent is the film Some Beasts. And we would like to welcome two big names of the Chilean film. It's an honor to have you here. We have Jorge Riquelme, the director, new director, and we have Consuelo Carreño, the actress, and Alfredo Castro and Paulina Garcia, who are very big in cinema, in Chilean cinema. It's the first time that you have worked together, right? And it's very strange because you are two big figures, acting figures in Chile. How is it possible that you never worked together before? Well, it's true that we have never worked together. We have, but my first professional job, I was partnered up with Alfredo, so we did work together when I was very, very young and I started. But maybe you don't know about it because it's a Chilean film and it stayed there. And we have worked together in theater, so then my information was wrong. Well, so you're a bit misinformed, it's true. Jorge, you are a new director. How did you convince Paulina and Alfredo, who are so important in Chile, to work with you, which is in a film that is a low-cost film? It's difficult to shoot. How could you seduce them? Well, I think that the cinema proposal that I made was what convinced them. They were interested in this challenge, the production model. It's a film that has no dialogue but actions, and it was a challenge. And the challenge is also to go to an island in the south of Chile, and the other actors and actresses were very, very good, very young. So all these elements made it very interesting. The crew, the respect and the love that was among the actors and actresses, and the script and this production model that is very new. Was it like that? Well, the film was shot in south of Chile in 12 days. 12 days with a budget that I don't want to say out loud because it's like a joke. But what convinced me was the methodology and the script. It was very clear. It was very clear what was the starting point, how was the development. Also, there was no dialogue. So we wanted to try before the camera and see how we could create the climax situations or the love or sex or humor without words, which is a wonderful challenge for an actor. In my case, Jorge wanted to shoot it despite he had no funding. He asked for funding to the Chilean government and he was denied it. And I thought it was crazy. It was really crazy that he was so obsessed and wanted nevertheless to shoot the movie. So I said, okay, let's help him. And I jumped in. I jumped into the project. And when I arrived on the island, I saw that it was very, very attractive. There is only one house on the island, and that's all there is. And the nature, of course, nature is 1,000 years old in southern Chile, and all that framework for the film and the idea, how we wanted to shoot, was very, very attractive. And then working with Fredo or Consuelo, well, I didn't met Consuelo before, but I had heard of her and I had seen some of her work and I thought she was terrific. And the other actors and actresses, I had already a very good relationship with them. Consuelo, how was it to work with two very important actors like Alfredo and Paulina? Well, it's been a challenge for me, but also an honor, because Alfredo and Paulina are like the topmost reference in Chile. And maybe it's if you're studying to become an actress like me, the two inevitable references are Alfredo and Paulina. So I was constantly listening to them, learning from them, and it was like an incredible, gratifying experience. And with Jorge, I had a very close link from the very beginning, a very deep link. And maybe we didn't talk about it in the open, but he has studied as well to become an actor. So I think I could feel that connection. I understood very well his language and what he wanted from me and from my character. And it was really great. I had a very good time. It was a great challenge as well. It was very difficult. But I was feeling vertigo all the time, but it was a great challenge. 6 characters that are trapped on an island, and from that starting point, many tensions arise. Let's see a clip.
Mamá, te queríamos preguntar, más bien proponer justamente de esta, y por eso que les estamos contando de las bondades de este lugar, porque mira, lo que queremos es que nos ayuden en este proyecto.
Está muy lindo esto.
Yo creo que la abuela les va a decir que sí.
Ni cagando, la abuela es así. Oiga.
Puede ser un buen negocio, yo no se lo voy a discutir porque nosotros no entendemos tanto hotelería tampoco, no es que estemos en ese negocio.
Jorge, con una técnica muy original.
The technique is very original, but in the end it is a reflection on family, on the different society classes, and this group of people that already know each other, but when isolated, become different. What was the main point at the beginning? What was your interest, and how did it develop? What was the ending or the final point? When I think about the film, I think it continues the work that I did in my first feature film, Chameleon. I used the same methodology, and the main topic was violence. And now I wanted to reflect violence in the structure of the family. There are 6 members that work as a social mirror. And the idea of isolation on an island was the trigger to move those dynamics. And I wanted to show political topics, social topics on characters that are in a family environment. I wanted to see the links among the young people and the links among the parents and then the adults. And it's a film that explains little by little what a family is. And it's a thriller. It develops towards the darkest part of each person. And you can recognize it in the music, in the acting work, in the images. Everything goes towards the darkness. On an island. At the beginning, you didn't think of an island, I think, and it came to you when you were already very advanced in the project. Was it difficult or easy? Well, it was almost winter. It was very, very, very cold. There were storms and high tides, and it was not a very pleasant atmosphere to shoot. On the island is no electricity, no water. So I recuperate all those elements and included them in the script because I thought it was very interesting, and then I started researching to get to feel the house and the story of the house. I think it's a magical place, and I think the magic of that space, the house, etc., impregnated the film and covered it with its magic. It's a very, very cold place where it rains a lot, and the fact that you need to go to the continent to get supplies or to get water was very, very complicated. So you had a kind of a parallel experience, very similar to your characters, right? Yes, of course. The climatology and the geography of the place had a huge influence on the process, and the camera work was also very particular because the camera was fixed in many sequences, and it allowed us to work like in theater. But I would even say that a life is a cycle, and we could shoot scenes in cycles as well. We could move forward in the scene to the maximum, to the climax point, and then let the scene get boring, and then restart it again and let it get intertwined with all of us, and then restart and arrive at a climax higher than the previous one. And I think that was only possible because the photography director and the film director found a kind of collaboration that was very good. Thank you very much for this wonderful film, for your directing work and for your acting work. The other day we saw a Chilean film, and we started the dialogues here with that film, and we closed them with this Chilean film as well. You're always invited to come back to San Sebastian. Thank you very much. Our last stop today.
Thank you very much for coming.
Our last stop today, and it's the last film that we will talk about in this year's festival. It's a very enjoyable film. It's a film in which you can dance, you can sing, and we have the director and the producer with us.
You can understand me. Yeah, so I was saying that this is a film that the public should enjoy singing and dancing.
Yes.
Yes, and es una película, it's a film about Aretha Franklin, es una película sobre Aretha Franklin, me estoy aquí liando en los idiomas,
The
una película
translation.
sobre Aretha Franklin,
Hello?
una película que cuenta,
So this film
digamos
talks
que es un
about
montaje
Aretha
de una
Franklin,
grabación que hizo
and
Aretha
it's
Franklin en
it's
1972
based on the
para
material
grabar un
that was
disco en
shot
directo en
by Pollack
una
in
iglesia de Los Ángeles. Se
1962.
juntó ahí
It's a
durante 2
concert
días con público,
from
con un
Aretha
coro
Franklin. She was
impresionante,
singing
grabaron un
2
disco,
days
que es
long
el disco
in
más
a
vendido
church,
de Aretha Franklin, uno de
and
los
she
discos más vendidos
recorded
de la historia
her
del soul.
best
Ella cantaba las
album,
canciones
Amazing
religiosas que
Grace,
cantaba
which
cuando
is
era
one of
niña.
the
Hubo un
soul
equipo comandado por Sidney Pollack que grabó
records that
todo
has
aquello,
been
pero aquellas
a
grabaciones
reference
se perdieron.
in soul
Ahora
music,
él las ha
but
recuperado y
the
ha
images
montado
were lost for a
todos
long
esos
time, and now
desconciertos
you
en un
have
documental
recuperated them,
que es
and
increíble.
you have
Se
created this
llama Alan
documentary
Elliot,
film that
es
is
productor, es
incredible.
guionista,
Your name
y
is
la primera
Alan
pregunta
Elliot,
es, ¿qué
I
pasó
think. And my
con todo
question
este
to you
material
is,
durante
what
todo este
happened to
tiempo
this material
y
for
cómo ha
that
podido
long
descubrirlo
time,
y
and how did
documentarlo?
you discover it?
It's a simple answer. When they made the movie in 1972, nobody brought one of these. Clap.
Clap.
So you couldn't sync the audio with the video. If they had done that, they would have made a movie, because it was, you needed that. If you didn't have one of these in 1972, you ended up with a bunch of film which would go on a fishing line held by a paperclip and then sunk together, with a 1/4-inch tape machine. It's not digital where, we can make a movie on this. Not this or that. And then these crazy circumstances come on afterwards, which add to the drama of my life. Not so much for the movie, but certainly for my life, because Sidney Pollack never told me while we were working together that there was this simple problem. So he creates this mythology that Aretha Franklin was not happy and that she didn't have a contract and that there were all these things. So it's like the Wizard of Oz. You have to go and meet the Tin Man, and you have to go meet the Cowardly Lion, and or the lawyers for the Cowardly Lion, really, and talk to them and say, was there a contract? Is this a contract? Is that? And then finally you find out it's this. But by this point also, everybody believes there's a wizard. I'm going to continue with this analogy. Everyone believes that there's a wizard, and there's no wizard. It's just, but unfortunately, Aretha Franklin now has pancreatic cancer. And when I find out she has pancreatic cancer, I didn't start the movie to, be disrespectful to the woman who demands respect. So we decided to put it away for a couple of years and work with the family because, it was a painful demise, unfortunately. And then she passed away. The family asked me to come to Detroit. We showed the movie. Everybody loved the movie. And we went off with the wizard in the little box, in the balloon, and everything was good. And we were back in Kansas.
Vamos a ver, está diciendo que Sidney Pollack.
I'm glad I came up with this thing. Now I can say this.
No, Sidney Pollack was a very well-known director. Sidney Pollack
was a film director that was very important at that time already. He had already started his huge career, and he installed a lot of cameras around the set, and he forgot to put that clap.
People ask me the question all the time.
Yeah.
And I have to
It's amazing.
I have to remind them
unbelievable.
that I was 7 years old when they made the movie. So he had bad luck. Maybe he hired a bad crew. Maybe nobody, when they got in the truck, said, "Don't forget the clapper," or "We're going to go to lunch," And so, we forgot the clapper. Well, get the French fries. They made a mistake. And but I say, the movie is a miracle, but it's not an accident. There's and I believe God has a tremendous sense of humor. So this becomes part of this, evincing of God's great sense of humor, that he would, have this incredible director have this horrible thing of luck. And then for that director to eventually be told by a younger version of me, I know how to make the movie, you don't know how to make it. And then him to say, okay, you go make it. And he did. And so that was very generous and loving, but more evidence of God's sense of humor.
Bueno, pues vamos a ver alguna imagen de la
Let's
película.
see,
que, insisto,
let's
es una
see some
película muy
images of the
gozosa.
film. It's a very enjoyable film.
At this time, the young lady that needs no introduction, the young woman that made all of this possible tonight, I'd like for you to receive the First Lady of Music, Miss Aretha Franklin.
Pues imaginaros hora y media con
1 hour and a half with
¿Cuántas horas
images
había
like this.
de
How
grabación?
many hours material did you have?
There's 14 hours of movies, of shots. Yeah, if I decided to make a movie of, it could be 14 hours long, theoretically. What was funny in the God sense of humor continuation was that most of the time it felt like in the editing process, all 4 cameras would run out of film at the same time. And so we would say, how are we going to finish the song? And we would have to manufacture something. There was enough to make the movie, which is all you need.
Digamos que a la hora de editar.
So when you were editing, when you were cutting and editing the film, there is Aretha Franklin, there are the musicians, but the public is also there, and it's very important. And I think when you had to choose the images, you were not thinking so much about Aretha, but you were more concentrated on the public and their reactions, because this is very moving.
It's interesting editing this movie. I don't know how it'll be to do the next one. This is the only one I've made. So for this one, because it's music, there's 2 things. One, there's the visuals. 2, there's how the music flows. And I think the idea of how and inside this, there is the idea that this is one of the more famous records ever made. So you have to be aware that you are dealing with sacred material. And then you have to be blasphemous enough to edit that material. With that in mind, what is the flow, almost like a DJ? How do the songs fit together? How can you go from the fast song to the slow song? How much of the end of a long song can you go? Where are the, and then, on a song like Amazing Grace, where it's 11 minutes long, where is the most interesting visuals to marry to, the audio? I'm not sure if I answered any of that question, but it was a good statement.
But it was very interesting.
Yeah, it was an interesting statement. So for me, that is, yeah.
Hablando del público,
Talking about the public, among the public sitting there was Mick Jagger. And were you conscious about that he was among the public?
Yeah. Well, he's Mick Jagger, so, oh, and there's Mick Jagger. I mean, if he was sitting there, we would say, oh, well, there's Mick Jagger. So you have to be conscious of it. But part of the fun was that Mick Jagger is standing in the back. And my favorite shot in the movie is actually of Mick Jagger, and they're doing a song called Climbing Higher Mountains. And Mick Jagger's in the very back, and he's the first one to stand up and start dancing and clapping. But then everybody stands up in front of him, and he has a bad view. And the next time that we see Mick Jagger, he's sitting in the front row. So
the second light.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody said, my friend Joe Boyd, who is one of the producers of the movie, said, well, everybody, because Joe was actually there at the filming, and he said nobody had any idea where the camera was except Mick Jagger. So, but part of this becomes, in terms of my overall socialist viewpoint and hope, that we treat Mick Jagger like everybody else in the audience, and that's it. And he's there, he's a fan, but he does, we know he's famous, but we're not going to give into his famousness, begrudgingly maybe.
Well done.
Yeah.
You were saying that you talked about with a family, with Aretha's family, and I would like to know if they welcomed the film well or not, and I also would like to know all the people that were during the shooting, the actual shooting. Some of them were very young at that time, and others less young. How was their reaction to the movie, especially those people that were very close to Aretha or those who were very close to the shooting?
The family. I waited a long time to show the family the movie like this. Because, first of all, everybody who's here, you make a movie and you go, I made the greatest movie ever.
Which is true.
Right, and most of you are right. But you have to have this undeniable energy to get through the process, because the other part of it becomes the incredible depression that we all go through. Yeah, so I'm glad to see they're all. It's become like a self-help group now. But inside this burst that you have to have, now I've finished a movie and I want to show it to the world. And Aretha Franklin's sick, but all the world knows is that I'm a bad person who she doesn't want the movie to come out, and I have to keep a secret that she's sick to keep this going. So now we show the movie 3 weeks after Aretha Franklin has passed away. Now, I just found this out the other day because I looked at the dates on my Google Photos as to when I was in Detroit to show the movie, and it was 3 weeks, and I was like, wow, that was not a lot of time to allow the family energy, or respect, or was it? And what I realized when we were there was, because the family invited me to go to the funeral, which was like August 31st of last year. And then I was back 3 weeks later to show them the film. But they had, dealt with Aretha for 8 years of pancreatic cancer, and she was sick, and they had to live with that. But then they got to see the movie, and she's 29 years old, and she's at the height of her powers, and she's a force. And they're being reminded of that beauty, power, and grace was really moving. And I think that meant for everybody, the most powerful, other than being here yesterday, the best film screening we had was in Los Angeles with the original choir. Where we had the original choir. There's 11 of them still alive, and we're all very close. And they were all incredibly supportive throughout this process, because we sort of shared this secret, which is I would show them the movie, but they couldn't talk about it because Aretha didn't want it out. But they're stars of the movie. Yeah. So we had this screening for the choir at the original church, and they watched themselves in this church with a full audience and famous people in Los Angeles, and they started singing loud, and they sounded like 50 people. And our ability to allow the community, we brought the band, there's the bass player and the drummer, we brought them to New York to do the Tonight Show, and they had that moment where they got to go back and show the young band members at the Tonight Show how great they were and be on national television, and to have the choir have their moment of being famous. That's been the really great give back.
Thank you very much, Alan, for sharing with us this wonderful moment in the cinema history and in the music history. And with this interview, we have finished. We have finished not just today, but the film festival. It's been a pleasure to be able to be with you here, to talk with different crews every year. And as usual, I invite you to come next year. Please.